Hi, everyone. I think there might be a couple more people joining us. Um, I'm gonna send you guys the agenda. Okay. And I apologize. Okay. I apologize. I sent the minutes so last minute. I sent them earlier today. It's just been very busy, very busy since that we had that meeting, the commission meeting last week. There we go. All right, I've sent the agenda. All right, and then what we have for our order of business is just the approval of the meeting minutes. If you guys had a chance to review both, let me, if not, if you only got a chance to review one, that's okay. But if you got a chance to review June, let's do June. Did you guys get a chance to review June? Yes. How's it looking? Is there anything I should?
Seemed fine to me.
Right. So, good to approve that?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, and then for the July one, did you guys get a chance to review that one as well? No, just no. Okay, that's okay. Otherwise, besides Joe, did you guys get a chance to review it? It looked okay. Was everybody who I said attended, were you guys there? Okay, that's okay. Then, Joe, whenever you can review it a little, but I think if you guys are all okay with it, then just approve it. Okay, so the next item on our agenda before we get into the working session is sorry. Yes, sorry, I will forward it to you right now. Before we get into our working session, I wanted to give you guys some time. I wanted to give us some time to debrief the meeting that we just had on Thursday. It was a lot. We did get a quorum, and that's great. But I think that we had a lot of ideas and a lot of conversations, and I just wanted to get your feelings, your comments, questions after the meeting. Have any? You don't, that's okay. Yes, kid.
I mean, I guess I should not have been surprised at how the reaction from the larger committee on the timeline. I mean, these are some of the concerns we've already voiced in this subcommittee. And I think we need to find a way, and Joe, you talked about this last time, that we really need to emphasize that this is, I mean, calling it a timeline, it is a timeline, but we need to find a way to present it as not a complete project, right? It's an invitation for people to engage with it and to help to build it. I mean, this is always the problem, is that if you go to someone with, say, this is the history of, you think, well, that's it, it's done. Well, if there was only one history, we'd only need one book, right? Ever. This is not the case. What we're doing here is it's a tool of engagement, trying to get people to tell stories, to build more, to add more to it. And I'm not quite sure how to phrase it so that people's initial reaction is not, oh, but it's incomplete. And it's going to leave these people out, and I oppose that. So that's just my thought, that we need a bit of massaging around selling this, perhaps.
I think that makes sense. I think overall, a lot of what this commission produces, if anything, it's gonna be important for us to think through how we communicate to the public, because I think the commission itself already communicates something very specific and very intentional. So part of our working session today could be, thinking through what we would want to say. And then, I can work with our communications team as we see fit, to go forward, to really craft a narrative that makes sense. And we can bring it back to review. So we can add that as part of our task list. Because I would agree that it does matter how we launch it, because even if it's incomplete, people will also question what that means, and also question what it means for a commission to do work and then still have it be incomplete. So yeah, I think that it's a great point that we do have to be precise in our use of language.
I also wonder if there might be a solution that holds hands with the events committee in the shape of an event we could hold at in multiple public spaces, including BPL branches, inviting people to contribute to a living timeline. I've expressed, some of the concerns that have already been raised about Jim's timeline, which we all know is a deeply impressive project of many, many years, and is also a singular perspective. And I also hold that hesitation about platforming it, and because it does, as Jim presents, it kind of exist as its own object, its own project that is not as it exists in conversation with anything else. So that is one of my big hesitations about hosting it somewhere as well as part of a commission project. If it were a matter of it was housed somewhere at a place that really wouldn't be necessarily our responsibility, it would be something we would be delighted, or I would be delighted to point to as part of the database that we've been talking about as one of many sources. But I would also be very concerned about putting it on a pedestal.
I just agreed. I think that the challenge is twofold. One is that nobody's seen the whole thing. We've only all seen bits. And Jim is, and that's by design. Jim does not want people to see the whole thing, for his own reasons. So we can't even evaluate. So what if it turns out that it actually has all of the things that our underrepresented communities would want, but there's no way of evaluating that without actually looking at the data. And then the other thing is this new information about he's got a grant to work on it and is hiring somebody to build it. And therefore it seems like it's going to end up being, as far as I'm aware, it's going to be the kind of resource that Dory is talking about, something that we can point to as a great place to find information. Oh, and Hyde Park Historical Society. This is Jim Vrabel is the author of several books that are timelines of Boston that are very, very well received in a lot of different ways. And a lot of us use them for, his last name is spelled Vrabel, just in case you wanted to Google him. And he's got a database that has powered a lot of the books that he's written in the past. That he really has been trying to find a home for several years. And the commission has been talking about trying to push this forward, put forward the idea that Jim's database could be something that we could support as commission's work. So that's sort of the background about what we're talking about. Is everyone in agreement with my explanation?
Yes, but partly too, we initially were talking about creating a timeline. And then it occurred to some of us that Jim Vrabel's already done this. So why are we reinventing the wheel that he has already done? You know, and Jordan is right. We've only seen pieces of the wheel. I suspect Joe and I probably have seen more of it than a lot, but a lot is there. And again, this is a building block. So thinking, should the commission be spending its time with each of us trying to figure out what happened when we essentially have the basis, someone else has already done it. So I don't think we were talking about putting this on a pedestal or saying this was the last word. It is really a building block and something to begin with, as opposed to now we've done it. Nothing else needs to be said about anything that's happened in Boston since before 1630 or after 1630.
I just want to read Cedric's comment here. He said, the larger commission might have understood it as a work in progress if there was a dedicated staff person to do an outreach effort populated based on data from our subcommittee, community organizations, etc. And that he met with Jim Vrabel earlier this week, and that there are huge gaps in relation to Native peoples, and he knows that. Again, how is it resourced so that someone can locate information in the other areas? I can point certain directions, but don't have the time to develop entries for it, and yeah, that's a great point. I think that that's something that I feel like the larger commission does understand that this would require a lot of labor to host it. And I think it was Amanda, might have been Amanda, who said, you know, it might have been anybody, but that it's a point in the data set. Because I agree, especially if we don't know what the full data set is, we don't know what it has and therefore what is missing. But we can be clear, because archives are never all encompassing. There are things that are missing. So I think, Kim said, if we're able to host this timeline, is there a way we could highlight certain timeline entries to bring attention to points in time / perspectives that otherwise might get buried in the sheer volume of information that exists? Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on if we're hosting it and designing it, because it's one thing to host it and have him present the information in his way, and it's another thing for us to host and design it so that it's intentional in doing that. So then that would be two separate things. I mean, we could give that as a suggestion for him as he's doing his own website, but at the end of the day, it's his website. He can build it how he wants. So I think we have to figure out, I guess we know that if we can't see the whole thing, we can't evaluate it properly, but we have to figure out, instead of if we're hosting this, how can we use what he has, if we can access it, to support whatever we are doing, instead of having him be the center of our projects.
I just wanted to jump in and say that I think that the more we talk about it, the more it seems clear that it can't be hosted by us and that it needs to be a option. And I think Cedric's note on the gaps is a really important thing to see. I think also in the last meeting, Dr. Trent really brought up some points that I had not really thoroughly considered about some of the stakes involved with this. Not about the federal stuff, that's an issue, but more about the visibility of this project. Ultimately, it feels kind of like a small community right now, but it will be an official kind of output. And that comes with it a level of oversight from the public, even if we project it as a living document, a living, project. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perceived that way. And I think that the timeline from Jim's stuff has always been just kind of too big for really what we need, not like want, but need for this. And I think we could come up with a more curated list of dates for the timeline and have Jim's be one of the places we point to as additional information. And I think that could be enough for what we're looking for. Oh, and related to that real quick, Hennessy, this might be more of like a philosophical question, but do we know from the city's kind of process about things that go on the website? Is a living website for boston.gov okay? Is that such a thing? If you know what I mean? Like, can we put things out on boston.gov and say, this is a work in progress, this is a living document? More of like a best practices, like, will the city come, if we talk to other people in like communications and IT, are they going to tell us things like, that's great, and people have tried to do that, but it's never going to be taken that way. So if you want to present a living document, you can't. So don't use the boston.gov website to try to do that. Try a different way. Maybe it can be through our survey questions, the living document part, and then we do our best to put the most final we can get online, because that's the only way it's going to be perceived, and just understand the stakes are higher there. Or is the city able to, that's a lowercase c, are the people of Boston able to kind of see things like a work in progress and take that to heart and accept that? Is the press going to accept that?
It's a good question. I think we'd have to ask, because I don't foresee the city of Boston wanting, even if we frame it, I mean, maybe if we frame it appropriately, but I would think that I think they would be hesitant, even if we frame it the right way. I think they would be hesitant to put out an unfinished, right, product, just because. Or they would be okay with a document, a guide that continually gets updated and maybe is not necessarily being presented as unfinished. So I think this is tricky. I think this is a tricky question. And I think that I will have to talk to Stacia and to the communications teams and see what they would say. Yeah.
The other thing we could think about is view this as timeline with an S, timelines as it's written. So, I mean, we could have 100 timelines, and one of them could be pointing to gyms, one could be very specifically around, timelines having to do with, Native peoples in Boston. I mean, there's lots of different timelines that we could create. I think, but then I'm also cognizant of what Dr. Trent was talking about in terms of money and ramps and timelines, and, is it the commission's role and timelines, archives, and curricula to actually create these things, or is it, up to us to say this needs to be done by somebody
Right.
in this time frame, and then we will evaluate it based on our own various different knowledges, or because the commission is filled with brilliant people who are so knowledgeable, and and so but I don't think that everybody has the capacity to build tools for the next 4 years.
I would agree with that. And this is where I would love some input from the city, because I think the way that even seeing how the ordinance describes what you guys do versus what my job description said I would be doing with you guys, it's like they don't really match, because the ordinance says that you guys will be producing a plan and then a relevant department will execute it. My job description was that I would be delegating tasks to you all and managing projects. And so just don't feel like those are the same thing. And this is another conversation that I need to have with the new chief and with other upper level people so that I can get more clarity on how best to move forward, because I think that we are working on a product because we have all identified the fact that if the commission has something that tangible that the community can engage with, that's more meaningful than we're gonna create a plan and hand it off to to whatever department and yay, right? Then people are going to ask, so then what is it that you guys, how do we engage with you guys publicly? How do we engage with a product other than, you know, these meetings that we have where we plan things? So I think that that's going to be a fundamental question. Yeah, that's not an answer, but yeah.
I think related to that, I definitely imagine that this overall organization was the vetters of ideas and proposals and things like that, and that we'd be spending the majority of our time influencing and making sure that things are going in a way that's equitable, and not necessarily, you know, putting together the spreadsheet of dates that we're going to make be the timeline, or putting together the curriculum, but just making sure that it is what this commission was set up to do. But again, that's not on you, Hennessy, because you're we're all working with what we've got, which is basically we got to get something done. We got to do something with this organization, and we all want to do something.
Yeah.
And this is what we can do without the resources.
My only thing with that is whose proposals are we vetting?
Yeah.
Right? Who would be the people that, if they're going to be engaging with us, who would that be? Because then organizations who are not, you know, who are their own thing might just say, why do I have to be vetted by you? You provide me you don't provide me any support, you don't provide me funding. Like, why would I care to go through you guys and you know, have that be critiqued when I can just not have that done? So that's my question. Local organizations, I just don't think that they're gonna bite that.
Yeah.
City departments maybe, but then who's that department? Is it the Office of Historic Preservation? Because then that's me, then I have to, you know? So that's where it's kind of like a, who are we betting? What are we betting for? And if no one's engaging with us, then we have to rethink what it means to be vetting things. I think that this archive, like this directory that we're putting together is a way to vet, right? Or a way to organize something that like is tangible, at least for now, at least where we are now. But yeah, that's my thought behind it.
I feel like if we could make money appear, and origins are, you know, who knows? I've got ideas, but that we could get people to submit projects to us by offering to fund the projects. And I think that was, an assumption that I think a lot of folks made at the very beginning of this, like in the Kenzie Bach phase of this, that was just a given, that the city would put up money on this, and that she wanted to ensure that that money wasn't going to go to the usual suspects exclusively and cut out everyone else, and because it's the easiest way to do it, and we just keep doing the things we've done, and I think I felt that this whole commission was kind of set up as a I don't want to say roadblock because that's the opposite of what I mean, but you know, like a filter for money to be equitably dispersed, and for good projects, because God knows there's going to be a lot of good projects out there for the next several years, and we could support them and we could, help redirect them into directions that would make more sense, or to be more inclusive, or to say that's a great project idea, but you can't do that without adding more to this and come back to us with a more diverse plan. But yeah, that's a money thing.
Yeah, which I
I
mean,
think that's how it would work.
yeah.
Could-
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like, Margaret came into that meeting as a representative of the collector treasurer, and she was like, usually commissions raise money or distribute money. So what are you guys doing? And I'm like, well, not every subcommittee is tasked with money anything. So, so that leaves us a little bit in limbo. However, I think that if we do something, at least with the archives, and then, I mean, what Dory was saying, working with BPL and putting on, I guess, and working with the event subcommittee, putting on tangible events. I think that that's now one of the best ways for us to engage with each other and with the public.
Is it possible for the commission to solicit like corporate donations? Like, does the ordinance say anything about that?
The ordinance is. Here.
Like, if the city's not going to come up with the money, should we just be?
Yeah, maybe, honestly, the legislation preservation tool subcommittee, their agenda item is just to identify potential funding sources. Because, I mean, the purpose is right, the purpose is blah, 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 developing and executing a plan. And we are supposed to, it says the will advise the mayor and relevant departments on commemorating historical anniversaries, collaborating with state level commemoration and historic commissions, ensuring that the city applies in a timely and robust fashion to available federal or state funds. So I guess we could identify. The only thing with this grant, the only thing is we would have to figure out what to do with this one. We can't distribute it to others. But just for that grant. But yeah, I mean, it does say that the commission will ensure that the city applies in a timely and robust fashion to available federal and state funds. That's not saying that we will do that, but that we will flag those funds and say, here's what we think. Or we do apply for those and see what happens. So yeah, I think that's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I was trying to just think back how Boston 200 ran, and they had tons of corporate sponsors, but I think they were an actual corporation, so.
They were at the very least the office of the Boston Bicentennial. So
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, but I don't think it's a bad idea to figure out if and when we try to fundraise or we try to apply for funding. If that's possible and what we can do with it. Because then if we could do different things with it. I mean, another idea that the events citizens trail subcommittee chairs had was, well, instead of providing funding, maybe we can have the city comp things. So if it costs money to have like security, then we comp that. So that if there's a cost involved in doing something with the city, engaging in practices with the city, then what we can do is review and reduce barriers. And that is in some way an equitable, making more equity. So that's another kind of lens that we could think about. Yeah.
Could we use MOT funding so MOT funding is available for this next fiscal year. It's $100,000 maximum, which is kind of nothing, but something. Could we apply for that as the city to either hire additional fundraising help or I mean, I don't necessarily think we need to hire contractors to like produce a plan for timelines, but you know, something that would at least get us to the next step, which is the city doesn't seem to have a plan for 250, especially for the next year,
Mhm.
and not for the following year either. But to get somebody that either is going to be dedicated to raising corporate funds, dedicated to designing a Boston 250 webpage, which doesn't exist yet. Lexington is ahead of us. Um, that kind of stuff we could get going. Um,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to get spent by the time we have a major anniversary. So it has to happen kind of like nowish, but the deadline's also this month, so it's kind of a fast
Yeah.
timeline to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can review really quick what you can and can't do. They said grant funds can be used for programming, and marketing, but the grant cannot be used for expenses incurred or obligated prior to or after the funding project period, annual operating expenditures or overhead expenditures, salaries, bonuses, or fringe benefits of personnel, not directly related to the project. And no more than 10% of the grant may be spent on administrative or marketing salaries. So it would depend on how big the grant is. Prize money, gift cards, scholarships, awards, plaques, t-shirts, uniforms, okay, cans, money, and entertainment expenses, including food, beverages, alcohol, cannabis, or tobacco. Legal fees, insurance fees, or membership fees, mini grants or reallocation to other organizations, and any expenses obviously not related to the described grant project. So, yes, but also depending on how much we would get, maybe no. But it is an option.
I feel like we could invest that money in a fundraising consultant who could
Mhm.
put together a fundraising plan. And I don't think that $100,000 would probably do a good job with that. But any fundraising for like the city as a whole for such a big event is going to exceed $100,000 if someone's working on it. So I feel like that money would be coming back very well. And the application talks about like what's your economic impact. It's like we're going to turn this $100,000 into like hopefully 7 figures worth of money raised, multiple 7 figures of money raised for events in Boston. But I don't think our subcommittee or the commission at whole is the ones that are going to be able to make that plan happen.
No, I think it would have to be, it probably have to be me. But I think that we'd still have to get together and decide what exactly we would be applying, how we would apply, right? What we would agree. I guess
And I
that's,
see, sorry, sorry, I thought you were done.
oh,
Finish up.
no worries, I'm done.
Is there anybody in the city that does that kind of like external relations bean counting that could write this grant for us?
I mean, I know that there are people who definitely do like external partnerships. I'm sure there are grant writers in the city. The question is, if they would have the time to work on this grant for us. I could look into it, but yeah, it's a possibility if they have the time. And I might also be able to work with like departments who are already investing in 250 tourism and see if they are. Hi, Dr. Marsh. Yes, Cedric said it would need to be the mayor and business community leaders to drive high dollar sponsorships. Ideally, they would allocate a portion of that to us to fund relevant activities and initiatives. Yes, I agree. And I think that was the intent of the list of people that are on the commission, right? Because we have someone from the Boston Foundation, Meet Boston, Chamber of Commerce. So I think that the thought process was that they would be involved in these conversations and then fund, but I don't know, it has not turned out that way. In practice. So I mean, it's still there, that it's built in, but I think that because we're where we are in this grant time doesn't give them the incentive to say, okay, great, you guys have things, we know the city will fund what the city will fund, and this is how we can. I think when we get there, then those are the relationships that we would start with first. That's my thought. But do we want to look over the archive stuff? I can.
And see, I can pass on some information about it. The mayor's senior advisor for partnerships and does like philanthropic and corporate fundraising. So I have some of that information and I'll pass it on to you after this. So you'll
Yeah.
have their name.
Okay, so should I pull up share my screen? Okay. All right, so you guys can see this, right?
Yep.
Oh, also I'll share it with you guys. We just have it already, but I will just put it in the chat.
Hennessy, can I ask if we do this a little bit out of order?
Sure.
So
no problem.
Kayla to me earlier today about the database idea, and I think it could be helpful if we talk about the survey that can help populate this.
Okay.
And then also the database structure, because I think that will help decide how this sheet that we're looking at here should look and maybe what needs to be included on that in the questionnaire.
Okay.
Is it okay if we do it in that order?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I want to kick it off. And I
Sure.
can stop sharing my screen if that's.
Yeah, sorry
okay
about
with
that.
you.
I didn't want to like pull the rein on that, but I think this might help. So Kayla had prepared, we asked Kayla to put together a proposal for the questions in the survey that we would then send out to other archives to kind of cast the bigger net. And I think I can pull that up on my screen. And I wanted to also ask if we should consider, and Jordana, you may want to talk a little bit more about this, if we want to consider this being in archives and other history holders. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out, I've got too many dang things open. This one, let's see if that works. Yeah. I can't make that any bigger, so y'all can read it. Actually, maybe I can, hold on. Yeah, there we go. And so it's really the intro is the City of Boston's Commemoration Commission is compiling a list of historical resources in the greater Boston area. It is our hope that these resources will help Boston residents gain a deeper understanding of our city's history with an email, and then the basics: institution, address, phone number, email address, website, link to online catalog, hours of operation, appointment. Going fast, I understand that. If you require an appointment, what is the best way for researchers to request an appointment? A short description of your institution's holdings, especially as they pertain to the history of Boston, and comments and questions. So I guess there's kind of three questions. Is this okay? Are we missing anything in this questionnaire? And also, Kayla and I started a conversation this morning when we were looking at this about whether or not the description is going to be something that we're going to be asking for in a narrative format, and then we do the work of adding it to topics so that we can structure it into a database, or if we ask the person that's submitting this information to try to do that themselves, and if that could just make a mess. So that's a bigger question, but I'm going to open it up to the floor for discussion. And I can scroll as needed, just give me direction.
You guys want, you can raise your hand or just speak. Share screen, you can see you all.
Is this something I can put in the chat to share?
Yeah.
I don't know. You might have to change the permissions first.
Okay, well, we'll just give it a wing and see what happens. I put this in the chat. Somebody tell me if they can't get into it.
It says I need permission.
Okay,
Same
I'll
here.
work on that.
I just changed the security thing. So if you refresh, it should work now.
Still saying I need
All
permission.
right, I'll do a new link. Let me refresh this. Oh my gosh, I lost my mouse. There it is. I don't know if this is any different. Nope. Same link.
Well, one thing, Joe, I liked the question that you pitched at the beginning, which is, should we think about sending this to people outside of institutions? And if so, what does that look like? Because this is a really, really excellent start for inviting GLAMs to respond. But then what about things like washing or the Chinatown story cart or, Jim Vrabel's timeline? So I don't know if it makes sense to have two different surveys, or if we reframe this survey in a way that allows for a little bit more of a kind of choose your own adventure in terms of responses.
I think it would be great if we could structure this one to be a little bit more, transferable. Not that I think there's anything glaringly wrong with this one, but I think if we're looking at it through the lens of this could go to, an oral historian in a tribe, as well as a, a Zine catalog or repository and a traditional archive. The only thing I can see is the word resource would probably need to be changed because it's too extractive. I think stories or something like that, and institution, to be an institution or entity or something like that. But other than that, I think it's pretty Boston histories. Yeah, Dory, like that. Is there anything else in here that flags anybody for inclusivity or issues if we were to send it to a broader audience?
I wonder if, in addition to providing a short description, you might invite people to simply list key terms, which would then require some interpretation on the back end, but that could send us in the right direction in terms of providing subject headings.
That's a great idea. A great idea.
So I kind of wanted to comment on what Joe had mentioned too about whether this is going to be user driven, the person filling out the form, or if it's going to require somebody on our end to go and kind of paraphrase what people are entering. So I, completely unrelated to the Commemoration Commission, I came across this resource that the Cambridge Historical Society had put together of archival resources in Boston, and it seems very similar to what we're trying to do. So I shared that in the chat. So what Dory just said about having like keywords, I think that's a really great idea. You can see how Cambridge did it. There's their keywords are like very specific. And like, for example, BPL has, I don't know, like 25 keywords. But then on the other end of that, if we're maintaining this database, we can always go in and take things out or make them broader or whatever you want to do. So I guess it's a balancing act of who's going to be in charge of that. And that's another thing that Joe and I were talking about earlier, since we're like, some of us are city employees, so it could be part of our jobs, but a lot of us aren't. So I guess that there's some logistics to work out.
Is this specific to a time period? Is this like 250? Because I'm just wondering, because I'm seeing their keywords are like Lexington and Concord for a lot of the ones.
In the Cambridge historical one. I don't know. I don't even remember. I think it's about the American Revolution and how
Okay.
Cambridge was involved with it.
Mhm.
I don't know how I came across this link. It came up in Google when I was doing something else. So, but if you look at the URL, it says Cambridge Revolution. So I think it's supposed to
Okay.
be geared towards the American Revolution in Cambridge.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I was doing earlier today was looking through the City of Boston Archives tags that you guys gave me. Because I said that I would sort them. So we can review that if we want in a little bit. You guys might violently disagree, but heavily disagree with how I've thought through some of these things, but that might be something worth looking at.
I think we should definitely do that. I think that will come into with the conversation about the database coming up. The worry that Kayla and I were talking about with providing the keywords at all is the click happy people that are going to be like, oh, I've got that one page about that thing and I'm going to click it. Whereas really, since we're the signpost, we really want people to be only clicking and telling us what they think they have. And actually, I think the keywords, maybe we can do that. We can say, can you provide some keywords about your holdings? Because I feel like that really does kind of cut through a lot of the stuff, but let them choose those keywords, because that way we're not restricting folks, because there's gonna be things we're not even thinking about, but that if we give them the list, people may click everything that they could even possibly have or may want to have someday. But yeah, I think that could really work. So if we do if we switch it to keywords for the description part, work towards making the term historical resources be broader to be historical Boston histories. Are folks comfortable with that being enough at this point to then green light this being sent out to that's a good idea, Dory, to add a second one. Yeah, that's a really helpful thing, because then if people need to have a narrative, we can have them both. That's a great idea. So if we do that in addition, would people want to see that one more time before it goes out? And Hennessy, can we send out an email that says, here's what we did as a result of your suggestions? If folks are comfortable with this, we're going to go ahead and send it, so we don't have to wait until the next committee meeting to then review together and then submit.
Can I offer a couple of framing suggestions after we talk about logistics too?
Sure.
Okay, so Hennessy, what were you going to say about?
Yeah, that one's tricky. It technically would fall under deliberation.
Oh yeah, that sure would, wouldn't it? Yep.
Yeah, it would.
Kind of the definition of deliberation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then that answers that question. We'll bring it back to the next meeting to decide. It's gonna drag it out a little bit, but
Yeah, I mean, if we wanna, I hate to reschedule. I was gonna say we could push it up, but
well, we may have more stuff to talk about to do between now
Yeah.
and then anyway. So what were you gonna say, Jordana?
I think I'd like to talk a little bit about what it is that what kind of institutions we're trying to collect and make available as in this sort of quasi directory. So in order to filter out the chaff essentially. And then also what it is specifically that we're trying to achieve. So, looking at our current list, there's lots and lots of different organizations. What I see is, at least, what I see is most of them have at least public programming and or open hours. And I think, to some degree, instead of asking for people so two things. One is, I think we need to think about that. And then I also think, I would like for us to think about what it is that we don't want to maintain as part of this, So when I see, and Kayla, thank you so much for for putting this together because it's really a huge amount of work. You know, when I see like, what's your address? You know, unless we need it to populate this spreadsheet, I wouldn't necessarily collect it. You know, what we want is like self-descriptions, in my opinion. What we want is more like self-descriptions so that we're not maintaining, well, okay, somebody says, oh, we've changed our hours from 8:30 to 5, and we don't necessarily want to be collecting and making available that institution. So like, you know, just a website and a description of what the a contact information, just a website, and then a description and some keywords seems to be like enough information for us to handle. Even if it's gonna end up being a little bit more freeform than we would like.
I think that's great. And I think it also really helps with inclusivity because not everybody's going to have an address. Like a traditional history holder is not going to be an address even. Um, it may be a person, and it may not even be somebody that's accessible so much to know this that the tribe has a historian or an oral historian that keeps the data. And if you want to reach out to them, or at least, you know, there's a vetting process for that. I think that's a great idea. So then that would kind of knock it down to, um, I didn't write down that list. Jordan, I should have done it. So
Something, I mean,
yeah,
very much similar to what you, I mean, to what Kayla put together, like name of resource,
yep,
you know, affiliation, if any, address, if any, you know, website, if any.
description and keywords.
Description and keywords, email.
All right, that's easy.
And
And
I also,
the less people have to put into that form, the more likely someone's going to fill it out too.
yep. And then the other thing is the framing. And could you go back to the to the form?
Well, I have 3 of them, but yes.
I was thinking about we might need a little bit more information here. Right at the top. And I was thinking about something like, yes, the City of Boston commemoration, blah, 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 historical resources. And we could say something like, do you know of an historical resource? And the other thing is that we could potentially link to our current one.
Yeah.
Saying, do you have changes to, here's our current list. Do you have changes to this that you can add, or what are we missing?
Yeah.
And then also with a particular, and also, you know, we're looking for publicly accessible sources of something around publicly accessible sources of information with a particular emphasis on underdocumented communities or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we don't need somebody to submit the BPO 14 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think building upon Jordana's point as well in the framing language, it might be helpful to, especially if we're thinking about expanding the reach of this to beyond institutions, to explain like maybe what a primary source is, you know, what are, you know, listing out photographs, letters, records, web-based projects, oral histories, et cetera, so that people have a little bit of additional framing. You know, someone might think it just might be helpful to have some specificity.
Yeah, or Dory, or something like, I mean, that could be another sort of checkbox, like, are you a historical society? Are you a museum? Are you a historic house? Are you a digital project? Are you, you know, that kind of thing could be.
Yeah. Oh, Jordana, you froze. So if I spoke over you, I apologize. It was not intentional. I was also going to say, you know, it could be helpful too if we want to add an optional question toward the end, something along the vein of, as we think about bringing these histories together into one hub, what else do you think we should consider? Something open-ended that invites the contributor to give us a little more food for thought, point out anything else we might be missing.
And also adding to Dory, Dory and I spent a lot of time together today already. So I think we're in this, we have the same brain. And then also who else we should contact.
Right.
And
Also,
oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Sorry, Hennessy.
I also want to add that this thing right here, this description, we'll definitely flesh it out, and we'll also we'll run it through comms, so that through the communications team, so that they can flag anything. So that it will be like doubly, triply vetted, so that we have a good, concise, but like well-written intro.
And
ahead,
I'll
Caleb.
put that on my to-do list to work on compiling this information into the a revised this, and then we'll vet that through our comms team, and by the next meeting we'll bring it back, hopefully bigger. We're not bigger, but better than ever.
Yeah.
And thank you, Kayla, for putting this together, because it's a really awesome thing to build from.
Sorry,
And then yeah.
Sorry. Dory just asked if language and communications access will translate this for us. They will. And so what we can do is to complete this, write the messaging and then send it to language and communication access. It might take some time though. So if we want to launch it before then, maybe, so we might want to wait for that. Or if we would like to launch it before then, we'd have to add a language section, which I have in my other Google Forms, so I can just send that to you guys. Where I ask which language, the language that they would like to have this form translated into, and then it takes them to the end where we like to explain, okay, we're gonna be sending this off to language communication access. Please leave this information so that we can send it back to you when it's available. So that's an option, but I'm sure we would want a more complete thing. I just know that it might take the LCA.
Both and. We should definitely do both and. That's the only way we're going to be able to get inclusivity on this. So I like it.
So I think all of these are really good points. But I guess what I think we have to go back to the beginning a little bit, because who is the audience that this forum is geared towards? Are we sending it to a known list of people? Are we posting it on our website and asking for submissions? Because then I think that kind of informs all the rest of what we're writing and who we're translating this for. So if we're putting a link to the survey, like on our website that Joe designed, should we do all of that intro stuff? Well, should we put all of that intro stuff in the wording and like the description of what is a primary source? Would that go on the website versus this is just a Google form?
I think that we should distribute it first to the archives group that was mentioned last week. And I think that would be a great beta test, because if we get back 16 responses that are just like, wow, you guys really did it this time, we'll know that there's something that needs to get fixed. And then, thanks for Donna. But I think that, well, to be really honest, I don't think we're going to get a lot of response if we just put it on the website. I think it's going to have to be worked at, like we're gonna have to be fishing this outward. It's not gonna get filled out itself. So we could try that, but I think that we need to start with the New England Archivists and then see what happens, and then maybe we'll get some direction from responses as to places where we can head with that kind of suggesting that kind of open-ended question at the end. That will be really helpful. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, but at the same time, there's a list that this will ultimately be populating, and it's not going to be 10,000 things long. Even if we tried and was as inclusive as possible, it just isn't. So I think that the New England Archivist is going to be a really great place to get going. And then I think we're going to have to just kind of do a reevaluation period to see what we need to do next based on that.
Yeah, so when I was writing the questions and doing this, that's what I was thinking too, that the audience would be people that already they're not the customers, they're the people giving the information. So I think that being inclusive is obviously very important, but if you send it to New England Archivists, you don't need it to be translated. Generally, there could be some exceptions, but I just don't want you to have to do this work and hold things back if it's not really necessary for this audience. I think maybe there might be a point to creating a survey for like the non-traditional ones. I guess we don't want to ask questions of and put too much work into it if we're sending it to a group of people that already understand what we're asking.
If we put it in the survey, though, a question or a request to pass it on to folks that maybe need to have access to it, to then submit their information, because someone be like, oh, I know that there's a history keeper for the Massachusetts tribe, but I don't know who that is, but I can forward it onto their email and say, hey, this is going around, you should definitely take a look at it. I think that's the group that I'm thinking about for the accessibility and the language transferring.
Definitely.
Is that I'm hoping we kind of get a and for our first round, is to kind of get to the first group of folks through the archivist, and then hopefully a little bit more beyond that, just by the fact that it's a link that could be shared. And I think that's kind of that's the part that I'm thinking about for the fixing some of the language in there, just so that we're not alienating people when they're reading the questions. I don't think it's ready for the website though, for sure.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. I hadn't been thinking like people would be forwarding it to other people, which
It
totally
might
is,
happen, yeah.
yeah, it totally makes sense. But also maybe like we could put a note in there that says like maybe this form isn't inclusive at just because it's a
Yeah.
form.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
there's, a the Perkins School for the Blind, maybe the person filling out the form doesn't use the computer. I don't know. Like they could send us an email instead of filling out a very rigid format, but like we're not gonna not take your information just because it's not in this neat little form. So they could always just email us their information if they want to be included.
That's a great idea.
To that point, Kayla, could there be a paper version of this for people for
Yeah,
whom a form would be, or email might not be an option?
definitely.
I just put in the chat sort of parameters I had been thinking about for like what we're looking for. Because if we send it to New England Archivists, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm in Newton. Like, that's close enough. And we want to be very specific that we want archives, source of history in the city of Boston and about the city rather than Boston area. So take or leave what I just wrote. I just wanted to make sure it was part of the record.
No, I think it's really helpful.
So,
Yeah. Go ahead, Kayla.
well,
I know what you're gonna say.
Joe and I actually had this conversation earlier, where I might push back on that thought a little bit, just because historically maybe groups might have been in Boston, but we all know that real estate has driven people out. So for instance, like if you say only in Boston, you're going to miss a huge Armenian community that's based in Watertown. But they all had Boston history at some point, most of them. And it's kind of just they moved out there because of real estate, or I just think we shouldn't be so exclusive that maybe, I mean, even like the National Archives is in Waltham, but they have a lot of great resources about Boston busing. So I think it should be about Boston, not necessarily in Boston, which I know like there could be stuff at Yale about Boston too, so that's Connecticut, but just at least
They
a
won't
little
be
more.
in this.
Yeah, I don't think they'll come and find us, but
No.
Well, if we do send it, I mean, if we send it to the New England Archivist, they might.
Mhm.
And they might, and Yale has a collection of indigenous peoples. I mean, it's terrible that it's at Yale, but it's there. So I think
we could definitely on our end put in a filter that says like these are in Boston, these are greater Boston, these are out of state. So that if people are using the database, they could filter it that way, which might make more sense when we talk about the database.
And I think too that we'll have to, I mean, this is kind of where we get to use our expertise, is like we understand what's being submitted. I get more responses than we need. And then we can kind of vet some of the information and say like, okay, we really don't need the, you know, Sherburne Marble Museum. Like they're just not gonna cover the ground that we need for Boston. But yeah.
That was also another reason why I had included the address in the form, because then it translates very well to a table. So we can easily put filters on it and say like, you're in Boston, you're not. So that was more of like a data point than like actually caring about the correct street number.
Yeah.
I think we're getting close to the end of the time and I don't want to I don't want to waste, not, oh my God, wrong word. Please forgive me for saying that. I didn't mean it. I don't want to run out of time is what I was trying to say before we get to the next part. So are we okay kind of stopping there for a little bit, coming back whenever our next meeting is? I don't even know. All right. So the other thing that we promised to bring back to y'all today was the start of kind of the database looking thing. And so that is all going to be, we're kind of coming and going at the same time. We got the database of all of this archives that we are managing as a spreadsheet right now that we're working to build from with this form, but then we need to have some way to present it to the public. And so Kayla and I sat down today, and I think we figured it out, or at least figured out what some of the hangups were. And so what I was going to do is present to you all kind of what I was imagining for an interface with the public. And then Kayla's going to finish by showing what that would look like at the database level on the backside of this, because I think that open table and spreadsheets and all those things are really helpful for folks that know what they're doing. As far as how to use them, I think they're terrifying to the general public. So I threw together this really, really, really crappy, but it's, I hope, effective black and white interface, which I think will put Chinatown's one from Northeastern, make it look glorious. So this is kind of what I envisioned for our product being presented to the public, which is essentially we're trying to help folks figure out where they should be going to answer their questions. And so you start by being able to select from drop downs. And those drop downs will be probably divided by different topics, like head topics, so neighborhoods. And from there, you'd be able to say, I want to learn about these different things. And these topics will be the topics, themes, whatever you want to call it, that we will be defining in the spreadsheet. I mean, in the database that Kayla will be showing. So for instance, I want to do Dorchester. And then I also want to look at, I got to zoom it out again, sorry. There. I want to look at the Black community. I want them both and I want to only see stuff from the civil rights movement. This is totally fake. This is not a live document. This is just a Google Doc. So it's trying to make it look like a web page and it just isn't. That could be one way that we present it. I'm a very literal thinker and visual thinker. So when I saw the guidepost thing, I thought like, why don't we make it a guidepost where you can actually pick the different things along the post that you would like to do. And then the ones that you're not as interested in finding more information about. And then essentially you've created your own custom guidepost. And then you submit those queries essentially, and you get back results. And the results are, this is great. These story holders match all of your resources. In this case, since we're doing Black Dorchester during the Civil Rights Movement, we added UMass Boston, special collections, BPL and city archives, because they'll always come up. There's no way that a theme is not going to be covered by those two institutions, let's be honest. But then we can also then give the information to them additionally that says things like, okay, well, these things aren't all three, but you may still be interested in this one that checks the box for Black history and the Civil Rights Movement, like the League of Women for Community Service, Dorchester Historical Society. This is not complete because I didn't make a database. This is just typing. And And then we could also say things like, all right, nothing matched everything you wanted, but here's at least some of the results. And I believe theoretically from my conversations with Kayla, we could actually make this all be populated from the behind the scenes with a database. Now, this is not Drupal, cityofboston.gov appearances. So, but this would be at least the way we could have it be the guidepost for finding institutions to then reach out to directly. And so we're really just a matchmaker between a researcher and where they should go to do research and stopping at that point. Do we want to pause to talk about that, or should we pass it on to Kayla to then talk about what this would look like behind the scenes before we talk more?
Could I offer, I don't know if this is an option. I haven't put out feelers with my colleagues at BPL yet because I was waiting to see kind of what we as a committee landed on as far as this database, the shape and use of it. I could also ask if this is something that we could support at BPL in terms of providing a landing page and infrastructure. But I also would need some, I mean, so how does that land with the subcommittee? And B, is this something, Hennessy, that you could provide some guidance on in terms of how we approach that conversation?
I mean, subcommittee can enter that what they think. I think that it could be okay as long as we present it like appropriately. Like I think it would be totally fine if something that the city of Boston worked on ended up living with the Boston Public Library. Yeah, I think that would be okay. I think that we could just we might talk a little more about how to present, how to market.
I think,
Oh, go ahead.
of course, with the Mind Meld with Dory, I mean, the commission will end and the BPL will be forever, right? And so, I mean, and Dory is in community history.
Donna, I think you froze a little bit.
Dory is in community history, which is a new department at BPL. Am I still freezing?
Good.
Okay. And so, if Dory is willing to step up and say, oh, I'll keep this resource updated, then it only makes sense for it to start there.
I would agree. I mean, obviously, especially because the commission ends, I think that's why it should be part of the, department conversation and like other organizations. So I'm totally okay with it being like a product that exists in the BPL.
Thank you. And again, I'd love to hear what everyone else in the subcommittee thinks. And part of my asking this, as Jordana said, is that we know that we have this stable URL, but also, and again, forgive my not knowing, but is this something that and this is not to volunteer labor of my colleagues, but more to find out if this is something that could I tap my colleagues to help develop the back end and front facing infrastructure a little bit. Is that something that we could offer? I'm still trying to kind of figure out what some of the parameters are existing within the commission. And also, Joe, I'm not trying to overstep. I'm trying to find ways to make everyone's lives easier.
This is a live Google Doc. This is not going to be a thing that we can make happen. So offering to make it happen is what we're looking for here. Yeah. I'm happy for that to happen.
And I also want to make sure that we're able to see Kayla's back end. But also before we do that, what does everyone else in the subcommittee think? I don't want to monopolize our time and space here.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
I just want to say when I left Joe's office at 11 o'clock this morning, that Google Doc was a sketch on a notepad, and this looks like a website, so I'm very impressed. I didn't need to do my database. It kind of already looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
I also took some time with what Hennessy was talking about with the city's archives. Uh, we're going to need to use the city's theme topics and add to this. I also put together some of the drop down options in organization. But this is kind of going to feed into Kayla's discussion as well. So I can take this down or leave this up, but it is a tab on the archives link that most of you look like you're actually in the page right now. So if you're looking at that, that's some of the themes that that I was pulling together, and it's incomplete as incomplete can be, but it's got 119 things right now, which I would love to see it stay under 200 just for the sake of not, you know, making this unwieldy and keeping the topics as broad as we possibly can, because we're really just the signpost, not the you know.
I would love 4 through 30, never meeting, right at 3:30. But I would love for Kayla to present. I should have looked at this document. I don't know why, but I spent all day working through the City of Boston archive tags. Ours look similar, so
Okay,
that's good. But you
They're
know, just
basically subject headings that
yeah.
are universal.
Yeah, so I did the same thing. I did neighborhoods, ethnic communities, I did broad topics, and we have the same ones. Mine were a little bit broader. Instead
broader.
of
Oh,
mayors, I had like politics. But
that's better.
I am
That's
not
better.
against. So I can show you guys that right after, Kayla. Sorry.
I
I'm gonna
can
stop
share my
sharing.
screen.
Mhm.
So this, I think is very ugly right now. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
It's very bare bones, but I think it'll give you what Joe and I were trying to articulate. Even though I think Joe's little Word document actually looks better than this right now. So this is, I know I feel like I was like harping on Airtable, but to me, Airtable is like when you say Kleenex for a tissue, it's just a database. So this is not Airtable, this is Caspio, because I could not figure out how to do what I wanted to do in Airtable. So this is just another database. I'm not committed to the database at all. I just needed the functionality. So I basically ingested what Joe and Hennessy had worked on into a database format. So most of us are familiar with Boolean operators. So that's what this is supposed to kind of mimic. So the interface, like what Joe wrote in his guideposts, we could change all of this. We can make it prettier and have more description. But I just did this today, so it has the bare bones. But basically, what we wanted to be able to do is say, I'm looking for African American and Black history, and then press search, and they see all of the results, and then to be able to filter it even further. That might not be a good example. Or if you say, I'm looking for the history of the Italian population, and just press search, it brings everything. But if you say, I only want the history of Italians in the North End, you could filter it even more. It's a little slow, and the Boolean operators in the back end aren't working right now. But this is just to give you an idea of what's possible. And like I said, I'm totally not committed to the look of this at all. So I don't know, Dory, if the BPL has different database software that they use that they could make this look a lot prettier.
What I can do is if we have some language, I can pitch this to my colleagues in digital and online services and see what they're able to offer. And then bring that back to our next meeting.
And Joe and I also talked about that earlier too, is the fact that the commission will end eventually. So it does make sense for it to be in the city of Boston's repository, whether that's BPL or the city archives. But I was saying to Joe, you usually don't update archives, you just maintain them. So a BPL is always constantly updating, especially things like libguides. So this seems like it would fit in this libguide section really well. Again, it needs a lot of fine tuning, but at least you can kind of get an idea of what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, Joe and Kayla, thank you both so much for showing us what's possible. It's really, it helps to be able to visualize what this will be in practice. So many,
Is it
many
meeting what
thanks to
people
you
are
all.
hoping? Yeah. Is it meeting what people want it to be, what it people need it to be? I think that's the other thing too, is like we want to make sure this is like a thing that people want and will use. So like functionality aside, is this going to serve a need? Is this filling a gap, basically? Because I don't know.
I think it does. I think that having a not a comprehensive, but a list of available resources for people to go to is, is a, teach the teacher kind of situation, and the way, especially the way that I understand BPL is going into the future is like, we're going to train you how to do this thing. And, and finding things in the first place is, it's not easy to navigate the history of Boston right at the moment.
I would agree. I would say as like, for example, middle schoolers, I'm not saying that, that they're gonna be, but as middle schoolers are learning how to do research, this is a good starting point for them even. Something like if BPS wants to be like, hey, where you guys have to learn how to do research. Here's how you find the resources that are legitimate and trustworthy. I see it having a lot of applications.
So
I
I think
think it would have application for like us. If I'm doing a reference call, I don't remember all the time where different resources in Boston are. So being able to have something that I could say, well, we don't have it here, but you might try out these other places is beneficial to everybody.
and I think having some really small organizations or even individuals in the same search results as BPL is going to be cutting down some serious barriers in Boston to getting access to data if we can make this be functional and usable and really applicable. Um, the one thing that we would have to do as a subcommittee is review the submissions of institutions, review the list of metadata or whatever you want to call it, topics, and connect the institution to those lists so that we can vet that part of it. Like, are they actually an institution that has these things, or are they not the appropriate person for that topic? Which is not a great thing, but we're going to need to do that. And then that would be something that we would then enter into the database and we would have available to the public.
So I just wanted to show what the back end looked like. I mean, entering the data, it's very easy. It's set up like a spreadsheet. You can also have it so that if, say one of us on the commission was in charge of updating that, you could set it up so that it's a form. So it would be really easy to enter stuff into, and you wouldn't have to worry about what it looks like on the other end. It all updates. So this is very sparsely populated right now, but you add the different categories to the different fields, and then not everything shows up on the search results screen. You can choose what you want the public to see versus what is internal to us.
This is awesome, Kayla. Can
You guys started the list, so I just put it in here.
It's helpful though to see it kind of like this. So 2 questions. One, Dory, do you need any of this from us to do your pitch?
Sure, it can't hurt. Is that fine if I share the links to your drafts as well as our big spreadsheet, just to show my colleagues what we're working with, and to kind of gauge from them what would feel possible. And then I can come back with, again, with a little bit more information. Thank you, Joe.
Yep, that's the crazy web, not web thing. I don't have Kayla's one, but the archives spreadsheet, do you need that as well?
I have
We
that.
have it.
Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I think everyone's in there. I just want to make sure that that's clear. All right, so yeah, and then so you've got that information from the broader committee. Is there anything related to the database that we've shared that you would like to see different by the time we come back next? Or is it right now my only action item for the database is to get that information to Dory and then wait to hear back what the BPL says? Are we comfortable with that alone, or do we want to see any more changes to the database between now and then? Tennessee, we have your list of metadata.
Yes, do you guys want to see that really quickly?
Yes,
Okay.
because I think we should justify the or rectify the two, and then people
Mhm.
should look at that list and see if there's other things that need to be added.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me know. Can you guys see this second screen here? Can
Yeah.
you-
Dog
can-
licenses at the top. Now it's the archives.
Okay. You can see the archives.
Yep.
Okay, so this is what the archives that Kayla sent in the Excel sheet look like, front facing, just so you guys know. Okay, yes, dog licenses. So this is what she gave me. It has the term A through Z, the type and the source. And what I went through and did was just, I mean, if it's dog, it was like dogs, horses, pit bulls. I was like, okay, those are animals.
Mm.
If it's like human rights, how citizenship, freedom of speech, I have civil rights. I have commemoration for like statues, Labor Day, monuments, anniversaries. That's what I have for that. There's like budget, commerce. I don't know why cooking is there in that, but like I just have that as economy. And then obviously with some of these like consumer protection, or like education and public health for nursing schools. There's occupation, architecture, religion, environment. So that includes like put it for like environmental policy and also like parks, like how our cabinet is. We do both. Got ethnic community, gender, which obviously we can make it broader, this one is just history. Made it as broad as possible. And then we can go in and change it. So I have housing, housing education, I have the legal system, so like courts, crime prevention, jails, litigation, liquor laws, that could be other things too, but I have LGBTQ, for these ones, I just put location for now, which is like it's like Castle Island, Faneuil Hall. I just put location just to group them together very broadly. I don't know that location is the best word, but that's what we have. I have all of these are like photos, audio tapes, periodicals, newspapers. So I have that as media. Then neighborhood, occupation, politics and government. I have that for like democracy, election districts, elections, mayors, things like that. And then I have a section for public health. Public health history locations. So I do some specifications. I did public services for a lot of these like social public goods. And then a lot of these I just put out as records. So deeds, permits, census, just so that I could get them together by the thinnest thread possible. And I didn't get through all of them because there's 500 of them, but I got through like 400. So it's a good amount. I'll stop sharing, but that was my thought process to try to make it big, and then we can sit down as needed. And then we can work with what we all have and come up with something solid.
Do you want to finish the 500 before you share it with me?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Once you get done with that, send it to me. There's a whole bunch there that I didn't come up with on my own, so it's really helpful. And then we can kind of start winnowing down or combining from there. And so that can be one of the things we can talk about next meeting is this, I don't know what to call it. I like calling it metadata. That's the archaeology side of things, but I think it's metadata. It's more topics, but we use it differently than archives do. Okay, and the other action item that I have that I just want to finish because we're out of time, we'll be editing the survey draft to circulate that back. So editing the survey, Dory's gonna work on the pitch for BPL. We sent you the information. If there's anything else you need, Dory, let me know. And then Hennessy and I are gonna work on cross-checking the thing. What word do we want to use just so I can kind of stick with it? Is it terms, topics, metadata? What do y'all like better?
It's almost like a Boston taxonomy.
That's too many syllables.
It's a very archival word, but
You could
It's-
just say tags or
Tags, I
keywords.
like it.
Yeah.
Tags. We'll work with that.
I'm
Okay.
impressed with Tennessee's taxonomy work there. It's a whole
Yeah.
class in grad school.
It is
Yeah.
awesome.
All right. All right. Thank you guys. Do we, very quick motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I get a second?
Seconded.
Amazing. Thank you guys. It's great.
Thank
I
you,
would-
I just
everyone.
wanted to say, this is the best working meeting I have been on in a long time. So thank you, everybody, for doing such a great job preparing and getting all these things done. So thank you.
Thanks again, everyone.
Looking forward to next time. Bye.
Bye.